Right, I'm the artist taxi driver, and ladies and gentlemen, I've written something. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to the man, the spiritual fucking being, the one with the golden soul, where every word, every utterance is like sitting in front of fucking Siddhartha, the prophet. He's a prophet.
The fucking neighbours think that we're fucking nuts, mate.
They won't hear it. The enlightened being, the sentinel of truth, Frankie fucking Boyle. Hey? What's the meaning of life, Frankie?
I think the meaning of life is that possibly the universe is conscious and that we're all just various different types of receiver for this kind of universal consciousness, and probably humans are quite a good and bold receiver for it. What,
like the Matrix?
No, more like Vedanta Hinduism. I'm pretty much a Vedanta Hindu.
Well, what's that?
It's just they sort of believe that all creation is divine, and that basically we're just God playing a game of hide and seek with himself.
So inside our minds, inside our nuts, everything that goes on in there is all connected with everybody else's.
Not so much as just it's actually is itself. So like they like they would think Jesus going you can look for me in this rock. That's essentially Vedanta.
What? Why do we go to work? We were talking earlier about working. Why do we go to work?
Insecurity. There's a thing years ago. This guy, comedian Steve Hughes, and I was saying to him, I just got a fucking big bill in or something, and I said, God, it just shows you have to keep working on your fact, don't you? And Steve went, no, we have to keep working on their fact. If we didn't go into work.
Who's that? The Queen?
Yeah, but there'd be fucking Harrier jump jets in the street tomorrow if nobody went into work.
Well, the Queen, like we were talking, you said to me earlier, the Queen doesn't like to be challenged, or the Queen is frugal. Was Nicholas Witchell?
Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
Now, we was also talking about the moon being hollow.
That's David Icke's list.
Yeah, and the reptiles feeding off of our pain. What's with the fucking Queen? What's her gig?
Well, they're just a sort of pageantry and all that stuff, all the kind of show-off elements of royalties sort of come along as they decreased in official power, and their power is as part of the spectacle. So, they paint with broader strokes now, and we have these big giant weddings and births and so on. But really, they're this incredibly conservative force, reinforcing the British class system. And that's why they're tolerated. The idea that we have hierarchies, which of course we don't.
But I mean, she's a hairy, goat-legged fucker. Who she's skull fucking the country. She's like they. We said it. She's feeding off our pain.
That's the best case scenario. If she actually was a lizard skull fucking people, it would be better than what she's doing in reality, which is like presiding over this fucking incredibly unequal society as a figurehead of this incredibly unequal society. And the greatest trick of the royals is they've convinced people of their own irrelevance. I mean, if you do a joke about the fucking royals now, people are like, oh, that's a bit passé, isn't it? And you're like, they own half the fucking country. They take a considerable proportion of the fucking wealth of the country, and you consider that irrelevant. It's a bit like they're really what their shtick is. They're a bit like stage magicians. And really, that look on their face that you try and place when you see them at the fucking weddings and stuff, that's just a really shit magician who can't believe how well this is going,
But they're like okay, she's connected to God. David Aronovich said she has direct correspondence with God. she has a Geordie Cockney army, Balmoral, Sandringham, Buckingham Palace, best real estate. She's got like fucking knights, lords. She's got money. She's got gold. She owns mines. She owns land. 52 nations. But she's powerless. How does that work?
Sure, but also I mean they are powerful. And there's that whole thing. I mean, like Abu Hamza. She talks to the government about why is Abu Hamza still in the country and stuff like that. They're not politically disengaged. Of course, they're not.
But they apart. Like you've got. She's the most powerful person in the world. Barack Obama. It's just an office. You know, this is a birthright. We got Prince fucking George, mate. He's got 50 armed bodyguards around him.
Well, the Director General of the BBC had to stand down because a show was edited to look like she stormed out of a meeting in a huff when actually she stormed into it in a huff. You know, that gives you some idea of the level of power. And it's bizarre because it's, you know, it's surreal. We live in a supposedly egalitarian society. We live in a supposed democracy, and you know we have a completely
it's like where's the wizards and the centaurs? What about you were talking last night? Agnostic Christians. Who are they?
The Gnostics.
Yeah.
The Gnostics were like an early Christian sect who believed that this was hell, like our Earth was hell, and that basically that our pain was being fed off by a thing called the demiurge. So the Earth wasn't created by God; it was created by this kind of demonic, satanic force called the demiurge, who fed off all our pain.
Prince Harry. What about Prince Harry?
Prince Harry, man. What the idea of selling someone as a murderer is quite interesting. Do you know what I mean? That they've thought of that in PR terms and thought, well, how can we punt this guy up as a mass murderer of people in other countries? Yeah, fuck it. Send him in a fucking.
And they brought in that gaming angle as well. That he was just gaming, and
Jesus, I mean,
he said he was a Taliban leader that he killed, but apparently it was just some children collecting firewood. But no one knew.
But I mean, the idea that that's a considered publicity gambit. I kill, you know, seems pretty amazing.
But they quite like it that he's out in Las Vegas, like gambling and that. There was a lot of, you know, if you're looking at the newspaper and seeing that, a lot of people think, lucky fucking get.
Yeah. Well, I bet after the fucking Vegas thing, I bet the first conversation he had with the security was, what, someone let those girls live? who fucking slept up here?
Prince George.
Well, you know, you just have more generations of it until people fucking wake up, won't you? He's got fucking 50 armed bodyguards.
This is never
the reason for
never
that
gonna
is
end.
That he can lock a bodyguard with a kind of unearthly stare, and they'll slowly start to put their fucking gun into their mouth. So they need to have 50 around him. And in the Omen, it was just a fucking Rottweiler.
Yeah, they'll all be chipped. Kate Middleton. What was that thing about? Like you said something about her tits.
Was it the only reason she's pregnant was because her tits aren't worth fucking finishing on?
Yeah. Some people felt that was a bit rude because Kate is quintessentially
a sort of. There's a new thing, isn't there, in sort of a new whole range of kind of Stepford role models held up for women of just utter passivity and almost on the level of a fucking sex doll or something. There's actually nothing that you could latch on to her in her public presentation that seems in any way human or.
Well, the Queen and Prince Philip's, they're first cousins, aren't they? That's why they've got those really big ears. And I think they brought in Diana and now Kate just to sort of like mix up the gene pool a little bit. What about the son and Rupert Murdoch?
I think that we were talking last night about this. There was an interesting article. I forget who wrote this, but some guy wrote an article about Rupert Murdoch's probably in the middle of a list of evil people that you want owning newspapers, because like there aren't a long list of good people who want to own media. Do you know what I mean? And so this guy was saying Murdoch's probably kind of halfway up because he doesn't have any other corporate interests. So most people who are like media moguls, like Ted Turner, or whatever, they have industrial interests, so they're climate change deniers. And Murdoch's just a guy who's in media, so he doesn't deny climate change. But really the heart of all that is that there's this idea of public opinion that's controlled by people like Murdoch. I think that's the real sort of cancer in it. So the idea of, the public are outraged by this, or the public think this, or whatever that you see in newspapers, you see on television, that's not the public. It's not the public's opinion. That's Rupert Murdoch's opinion. Yeah. That's the BBC News Agenda's opinion, and so on.
Rupert's on fucking top, mate. I'm telling you, right? Down the bottom, he's number one. There's only the Queen in front of him. He is fucking the Queen. I'm telling you, Rupert Murdoch is on top, and he's fucking the Queen. Right, TV is God. TV is God.
Well, did you see the articles yesterday? So there was a thing about the TV in the living room is making a comeback.
Yeah.
And this is all presented as like so in the Guardian and the BBC. This is all presented as a good thing. Families are getting together, and what they mean is people are in their living rooms, crowded round the fucking TV with their fucking smartphones, and that this connectivity has brought people back together. So we all sit in the same room, fucking completely atomised from each other, fucking, you know, watching things in our handsets. It seems to me an absolute nightmare.
Watching the BBC is like sitting in front of a gun. Okay, the BBC, pedophiles, Jimmy Savile. But I mean, the whole thing about the BBC is that it's an authoritative voice, isn't it? So, I mean, there's a lot of bias and things that people saying that like they're in co-conspirating with the government.
Well, I think there's a lot of unconscious bias. You've got to think about it in terms of that. It's like there's a lot of good people in the BBC who are trying to do in their terms a good job, and you meet some brilliant people in there who are actually trying to get something brilliant on there. But there's also the thing of there's a lot of assumptions in any society, and when you come to something like the BBC, obviously those get fucking distilled into an ethos.
The BBC, they're a bunch of skull fuckers. They're all Freemasons. They're all like they're sitting there, oranges. We'll be back soon for part 2 with the fucking the guru, the prophet, Frankie fucking Boyle. Right, back here with Frankie Boyle, part 2. I don't know why I'm shouting. All right, this government, we're talking about this government under the cloak, this is my whole premise, this government under the cloak of austerity, austerity for certain sections of society, under the cloak of austerity is moving the public into the private, creating like a Blade Runner Tyrell corporation. Well,
I agree with you to an extent, but I think you've got to be careful of that whole, you know, you've got to look at what you're allowed to say in propaganda model. Why is it we're allowed to bang on about austerity and bang on about this government? You know, Labour started PFI, and Labour basically made it the case that you couldn't build any fucking public projects with public money, that you had to borrow. And one of the most fucking disgraceful things was the M25 when it was widened pre the Olympics. That deal, which apparently should have cost about 500 million, ended up costing 5 billion, and the people involved in supposedly putting up the money for it actually borrowed the money from the government. We lent them the money to put us in debt to them, and they borrowed it through Royal Bank of Scotland, which at the time was owned like 70% by the public anyway. So they borrowed it from us twice, and now they're lending it back to us at an extortionate rate of interest. So there's no pretence, and there hasn't been for 15 years or so, that they're not engaged in large-scale attempts to transfer public money into private hands. That's what it's all about.
But a lot of like the money that when I saw the last budget thing, £45 billion was servicing our debt, and the 45 billion, which is for nothing, we're giving to banks, but they are the same banks that are building our hospitals, that are charging us big PFI things. It doesn't make sense. Well, just write that off. Say, what the fuck? What are you talking about?
Oh, well, PFI debt is much, much bigger than that. Are you talking about debt in terms of bond debt?
Bond debt.
Yeah, well, bond debt, I mean, every country has that. I mean, we had that,
But 45 billion, that's more than our military.
Well, get our military to fucking pay it off then, But, there's nothing wrong with having a fucking operating debt in your country. That whole idea of, we need to get this deficit down and stuff. We've always had that. I mean, the real problem is that they've promised contracts over PFI that amount to just a fucking essentially an egregious debt, the sort of debt that you would have associated 30 years ago with countries in the third world being forced to sign contracts that they weren't really able to agree to.
It's just masses of money, because they see that it's a lot of money collected every year. We said it's trillions of pounds, and they want that money. That's their gold mine. Do David Cameron in 30 seconds.
David Cameron is a drop of pretense. You know what I mean? So there was the old pretense of, the great quote from Cameron: "I'm not concerned if I become unpopular." You're like, wait a minute, mate, you're the fucking Prime Minister. You're supposed to be standing for re-election. But, his interests, that's interesting. He's told you his interests aren't in getting votes and getting re-elected. His interests are in pushing through business interests. His interests are making sure as much public money goes into private hands as possible, right? And he said that explicitly. Why is he not concerned about getting votes? Because Tony Blair was concerned about getting votes. Margaret Thatcher was concerned about getting votes to push forward their agenda. Why is David Cameron not concerned about getting votes? David Cameron's not concerned about getting votes because he knows the other party are now no different from him. For the first time, they have completely the same agenda, to the point where George Osborne can come out and announce things just out of the fucking blue, like people are going to have to wait a week before they get any benefit payments, and Ed Balls within minutes will be on television going, yeah, sounds fair enough. You know, there's absolutely nothing between them, so they don't need to give a fuck who gets elected anymore.
What about this racist van?
Yeah, it's just fucking... It's that thing, isn't it? Of it started, and this is interesting, people thought, oh, that's some rogue operators. That's fucking some mad racist. That's maybe EDL or something. It's not. It's the fucking government. You know, that whole idea that racism kind of seeps up from the ground and that the government respond to racist forces in society is bullshit. It trickles down from the top. It's instituted by policy, and then it trickles down to fucking people driving about in their fucking racist vans.
We've also got the border control at tube stations, Walthamstow, Kensal Green, Cricklewood, racially profiling people, and one MP has said that she's found out that it's, they're stopping just black people.
Sure. I mean, that doesn't surprise me. But
I mean, that's incredible for us to be living in this moment in history.
And, 5 years ago that would have seemed impossible. I mean, utterly impossible. That would have seemed utterly impossible after the 7/7 tube bombings, that you could do that to any extent.
Yeah. And also, it's a Tory agenda, isn't it? It's about scapegoating. So what the next election on immigration, nationalism, social security, and prejudice is about prejudice, and they're trying to get to win some kind of like populist vote on difference.
Well, I think they've got to kind of explain people's unhappiness. They've got to explain to people why they're so marginalised. Do you know what I mean? So them saying to people, well, why don't you have control in your life? Why are you so fucking unhappy? And they can't say, well, it's because of us. We've come in and fucking like closed down your library and your swimming pool and fucked you over in 10 different ways.
It's their fault.
It's these guys over here, so there's got to be an outlet, you know.
I mean, there's been some another sort of like a community group, the disabled, appalling attacks on the disabled through things like bedroom tax, where completely discriminated against.
I think they're going to kill a lot of disabled people. I mean, they already are killing a lot of disabled people, and I think it's linked into this idea of if you're not productive in our terms in society, then fuck you. So
Ian Duncan Smith.
They hate able-bodied people who they don't see as productive, right? What the fuck do you think they think of disabled people who in their fucked up reality?
And the workfare program where Grant Shapps came out and he said that he was proud of the fact that he'd got 5,000 people with cancer onto workfare program.
Yeah, I mean it sort of defies belief, doesn't it? But you can see their.
Can you imagine if someone told you got cancer and then you for whatever reason you've had to like stop working and that, and now they've told you you've got to go work in pound stretcher.
Well, one of the things is I sort of can't imagine it, and I think that's partly what they trade on, do you know what I mean? I think that's one of the reasons why you're not allowed to talk about things like fucking cancer and disability and so on, is that if you keep that as this kind of thing that we know is there but without actually fucking identifying it, then you can treat those people how you like, do you know what I mean? And I think that's a big part of why the culture's so silent on things like that.
I mean, they've just walked into privatisation, the outsourcing of the NHS. We got £5 billion contract this week up for Richard Branson wants it, Circle. I mean, that was unthinkable.
Yeah. But also people's passivity in the face of it is quite unthinkable.
Yeah.
You would have thought if you'd said a while ago that they were going to break up the NHS, that there would be fucking riots.
Yeah, I mean, where are the unions?
Yeah, I think that you've got to remember the unions are at the end of a 30-year campaign against them that probably started with the Labour government before Thatcher.
Yeah, but I mean, in lots of ways that some of the agenda, like the attack on the nurses, which is completely related to the unions. Do you know what I mean? And also to the BBC, the way that. They've lost a body, they've got to go on a safari, they're incompetent. There was one thing about this nurse was off to Alton Towers when she was off sick. It was in the fucking Daily Mail. Yeah. It's like fucking crazy.
Well, I mean, if you just look at that dispassionately, there are things where they try to demonise and marginalise people like nurses and firefighters, and ask yourself, well, do you agree with that? That's a good question. If you're looking at the fucking tabloids or you're looking at the TV news, you go, well, do I agree with that, or do I value firefighters? I quite value people who are prepared to risk their lives for other
But
people.
they've attacked teachers as well, you know, and it buys into like all sorts of, and it's about work. What we was talking about work, and people saying, oh, they get fucking holiday, they get 6 weeks a year. They've got no fucking idea what it's like to work in a comprehensive secondary school or any other fucking school. Right, Hillsborough, justice, no legal aid. They've taken away legal aid.
What, is this a new thing?
Yeah, there's no more legal aid. Well, basically, they've employment. Yeah, Chris Grayling, no legal aid for nothing.
Well, we were talking last night about that, weren't we? Like the whole thing of there's been such a long cover-up for Hillsborough, and that, you know, you don't really. It took so long for that to be dealt with anywhere in the culture, you know. So like eventually, like a Jimmy McGovern play came along, and you're like, well, where is that? That's quite a major thing for a society, that particularly a society that's obsessed with football, and that where that's a big identifiable part of people's lives, that something like that happens, is subject to a fucking brutal cover-up, and then the whole fucking culture lies silent about it for over 20 years. I mean, that seems incredible. I
was speaking with Janet Alder, and her brother was killed, and no justice. And you look at John Charles Jimenez, and I think what happened with John Charles Jimenez, it was like they got found perjury, 7 policemen in a coroner's court, but nothing. The CPS or no one took them to task about that. It's almost like they have immunity.
Yeah.
I mean, going back to like the government, Nick Clegg, just quickly, just let's briefly skim on Nick Clegg. He said like he wanted to do something about the racist fans, and someone was saying if only he was somebody like the Deputy Prime Minister, he could actually do something about it. He's an apologist.
I was thinking that in the last party conference, that essentially they were saying what they would do if only they weren't in power. It was like a fucking, it was like a satire, and.
He's the one who fucked the students. He completely fucked the students.
Well,
you know, where have they gone? Where's that protest? Because we just said that. Where's that? Where is the protest?
But I mean, you've got to accept now that you have a political class who don't have any concern for people, so he doesn't really give a fuck about students or anybody else.
Ed Miliband doesn't give a fuck.
Getting a ministerial
Ed Miliband?
Ed Miliband in a society, if we were like a primal society or something, I mean, Ed Miliband wouldn't be put in charge of fucking gathering kindling, do you know what I mean? He looks like someone with a fucking
Boris Johnson,
hysterical personality disorder. Boris Johnson is just that, he's a part of that thing. I had an interesting thing one time, right, which was like, it was in Romania, and this dude that was our guide, right, he takes us to his flat, and we sit and we watch this like Romanian TV show. It's like the guy comes on and does a kind of topical monologue, but he'll do a joke about the Minister of Defence, right? And the Minister of Defence is in the audience in his fucking military uniform, and he'll go up to him and he'll sort of go, that's right, isn't it? And they'll have a bit of back and forth. It's like this total propaganda thing, right? And I was watching it, I'm going, this guy, this is fucking terrible. I can't believe they get away with this. And the guy went, no, you have this in your country. I've seen it when I was over. It's called Have I Got News for You? Yeah? And you're like, yeah, that's what it is, you know what I mean? So Boris Johnson comes on fucking Have I Got News. It's all presented as this bumbling thing, do you know what I mean? I was on there once and they're like, next week it's Boris. And I was like, whoa, you know. And you're like, well, this is the opposite of what satire is supposed to achieve. Yeah. You're supposed to fucking winnow out people like
it's
Boris.
Terence McKenna, we're led by the least amongst us.
Yeah, totally.
I'm the Irish Taxi Driver, this is Frankie Boyle. Be back with you, part 3, 1 minute. Right, I'm the Irish Taxi Driver, back here with Frankie Boyle. So recently, you went on a hunger strike.
Yeah, I did a week. It was a fucking nightmare.
A week?
Yeah. I was trying to write something about it, but it's hard to write anything about it because, like, it's such a miserable experience, but then at the same time you've got to contrast it to fucking what people are going through in Guantanamo, where you don't even touch it. Like, you can't even properly empathise with it at your kind of hungriest or at your lowest in the thing. You're just like, this is nothing because I can turn the door handle and walk out of here. Yeah.
So it was about Shaka Amar.
Yeah. So Shaka Amar is the last British resident in Guantanamo. And like a lot of people in Guantanamo, he's been cleared for release twice. The British government say they want him back, and for some reason he's not been released.
Some people say it's because he's. I mean, even though you said the British government said they want him back, that there's a possibility that he might be going to sue the British government for being involved in.
That's not what I've heard. I mean, I think it's more that he's actually a kind of quite an eloquent spokesman for people in Guantanamo, and they don't.
But they're scared of him being out.
They're scared of him being out.
That's what I was trying to say.
And
because he's going to expose a lot of things that he has a lot of knowledge about, like what the operations was. He's talked to different people in there, and you know.
Well, I mean, he's you know the phrase they use, a detainee. You know, people are detained when you're playing taxis on the airport for a bit. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's a prisoner, and he's regularly tortured. So he's regularly subject to a thing called extraction teams, who go in and beat him in his cell every day, and he's force fed every night on a hunger strike. And it's a real stain for America. And the fact, I mean, it's almost like it's like 2000 AD or something, isn't it? That they would go and set up a concentration camp in the Caribbean, and start putting people in there without trial. He was an aid worker. He was actually building, for all we hear about misogyny and stuff in Arab cultures, he was trying to build a co-educational school in Afghanistan, and he was just swept up in that thing that's like the atmosphere after 9/11, which is vengeful chaos, and the Americans offer bounties on just basically any Arab-looking person you can find, which, you know, amounted to thousands of dollars in some cases, enough for life for some people in Afghanistan, and they just took everybody that got thrown at them.
So we see this kind of like that we live in this perceived society where we have freedom, democracy, and that. But like in the other ones we was talking about last night, you know, like about Pussy Riot, like they can do what they want, but we're going to be the good guys here.
Well, we're founded on exceptionalism. I mean, that's what we are. So we have a whole thing of why is it terrorism when someone attacks us, but it's not terrorism when we attack them? By any objective definition of terrorism, Britain and America commit acts of terrorism every day, and instead we have conferences every couple of years where people sit about and try and argue out definitions that mean things that they do, but not things that we do. So we're all about making exceptions for ourselves, and you know, you see that with Guantanamo as well.
I mean, I've got or last year I had a student who was Iranian, and at the time of like there was pushing like to have a war in Iran, she was very scared, and they're scared because they think that the Americans and the British might come. Can you imagine that?
There's just such a low quality of information about the whole thing in Britain, though. I mean, Iran, apart from anything else, proposed that there be a shared bank of fissile material.
That's right.
If you wanted to have a reactor, that you would have to go to a central authority and get that material, and that obviously was voted down by the United States and Israel. You know, because they don't want to stop proliferating nuclear weapons. They want other people to not have nuclear weapons. So, you know,
the whole deal about Palestine is if people don't understand it now, is they don't actually want peace.
What, the Americans don't?
The Americans, the Israelis.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think people understand Americans' involvement there. People just see a headline pop up every year or so going, oh, there's some kind of peace talks, and those guys don't seem to be able to get together. It
seems like, but the actual thing is they don't want peace. What we're talking about here, in a broader sense, is the war machine.
Yeah.
Banks, oil, and arms. So without widespread death and destruction, the global economy would collapse. So these sort of like operations that happen in you know, these 10 years war in Afghanistan, in Iraq, and, you know,
I don't think
Palestine.
The global economy would collapse. I just think these people would stop getting a lot richer. They'd have to buy a slightly smaller boat, you know. If you look at Palestine, it's actually a fucking... it's actually a kind of trial run for a lot of new defence technologies, you know, and lots of stuff that gets sold. So, like, you remember the full body scanners that came in American airports and stuff? They come from Israeli technology. The Israeli have a lot of big defence companies, and basically they try them out on a live human population. And when you see them fucking bombing Palestine in one of their periodic fucking raids on the news on CNN or something, that's essentially the fucking shopping channel for these people. That's like, oh, those work. Fuck, great.
I mean, the centre of the war machine, which is driven by minerals, is the city of London, the city of corruption. This is where like all the mining companies of all the world come to London.
I think what people don't understand is that the City of London is a tax haven in itself, and it's constructed to attract hot money into Britain, and it's constructed to attract criminal money as well as legal money into Britain. And a guy called Nicholas Shaxton, he wrote a really good book about it called Treasure Islands a couple of years ago. And it's all about tax havens, but essentially Britain is a tax haven. And when you look at all the fuss over Europe, right, you think, well, why are these people getting so upset over Europe? Because really they have a lot of similar interests and they're disagreeing about this. And really it's because they want to protect their pirate enterprise. Britain is like a pirate ship that's been called from the shore to come in for a health and safety inspection. That's how they feel about Europe. You know?
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that all these within the city of corruption, they're nefarious sort of like projects in the Congo, in Mozambique, in you know, wherever they go in the world, about, you know, drilling, mining, like gas flares, murdering the local population, paying militia.
Yeah, and also you got to remember, I mean, it's hard not to start talking about it as if it's concrete, but it's all imaginary as well. So within the city, they're trading on imaginary representations of these various endeavours, and they take cocaine because they need a shitload of confidence because it doesn't exist.
Because a lot of the people that are trading up there, they're from Chislehurst, Bromley, Epping Forest. They're fucking gambling addicts.
They're gambling addicts and they're cocaine addicts. You know,
sex addicts.
People who like a gamble, who need cocaine for confidence. That's the people who run your fucking economy.
But we also, like within our country, every single road, school, hospital has been built on the debt of other people around the world. So like when I was talking to Carla, he was talking about being the mother country and us going to these places and stealing their wealth and murdering the people there.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I mean, we're a great big imperial project, and we're living in this post-imperial age where we can't get used to it. And, you know,
is it post-imperial? Are we still not imperialistic? And Americans and Britain
Americans are. We're a client state of America. You know, we're an aircraft carrier for their fucking nukes, and we're a rubber stamp for their fucking aggressive wars. But we're not an empire.
I mean, the whole thing about, like, I went to Balcombe the other day, and you see in this little village, and they're there, they want to drill, and it's just a massive fucking operation. You see how many lorries and trucks have got to come into there. Like, when they go abroad, when they're in, like, Indonesia or wherever they got to go, they've ruined that place.
I mean, we were talking about this yesterday, but one of the things is you won't see any characters from there. They've learned their lesson and all that. So like years ago you get things like fucking Swampy the environmental protester guy, and they'd have various fucking things where they go and visit the camp at Greenham Common and all that kind of stuff. Now you don't get that at all. You get kind of long shots of people seem to be annoyed about something, you know, because they're very careful to not allow that to seep into the general culture. The idea of, we sympathise with these people. Oh, that's someone getting their landscape ruined. That's someone getting their fucking livelihood ruined. We kind of engage with that. They're very careful now to keep that at a distance.
But they're just in there. They're fucking in there drilling. They got Lord fucking Brown. They've got. Imagine Tony fucking Blair. He's like the head of the quartet in Palestine. He's like doing oil in Kazakhstan, fucking minerals with Paul Kagame in Rwanda. The man's a skull fucker.
Who would have thought it? He seemed like such a fucking nice guy.
But it's still like within this country. What about, like, we have the Queen's Geordie Cockney Army, which goes around and you know, I mean, what they do around the world is what the fuck are they doing? Killing people. Why are they so great to be proud of?
But like, there's loads of decent fucking people in the army. There's loads of decent soldiers, and there's loads of people like I started following some soldiers and fucking tweeting with them on Twitter and stuff like that. And like some of the things are like, I remember like when Osama being killed, I was like, I'm glad we're fucking sending more troops to Afghanistan now that Osama bin Laden's been killed quite a few years ago in Pakistan. And like quite a few soldiers are getting back to me going, that's the standard joke in the trips. It's actually something we all say.
So they're not all chopping off people's fingers, making finger necklaces, pissing on dead bodies.
I mean, the problem is the fucking people who are directing them. Do you know what I mean? That's the problem.
Because they've been trained. They're like. Look at Bradley Manning as well. Like, had to sign. Like, when you become a soldier, you sign official secrecy. Like, even if I see like children being murdered, torture, citizens, I can't say anything.
Well, it comes out in that whole thing of fucking, like, just at the point where they reveal that we're all being spied on, as a matter of course, that they call someone else a spy.
We're going to get onto that in the next... what is this, 3? Number 4, coming up next. Right, back here with Frankie Boyle. This is going to fucking wake a few people up. Scottish independence.
Yeah. I think they should go for Scottish independence just because it'd give them a chance in a fucking smaller unit to do something decent with their country. Do you know what I mean? There's no way through the fucking haze of Labour and Conservatives and fucking trying to align your interests with people fucking 500 miles away who have a completely different economic set of circumstances and a completely different fucking culture that you're going to manage to do it. But I mean, I think the problem is people here associate independence with the SNP. Vote for independence and get the SNP to fuck. Vote for independence and vote in a socialist fucking Republican party. Vote for some kind of fucking freedom.
That'll be the dream.
Vote for the fucking Greens. You know, anyone that says to me, I mean, for all this we talk about, there's political disillusionment and blah blah blah, and there's nothing between Labour and the Conservatives. We need a new party and all that. Pretty much everything that you could fucking want decently would be covered by voting for the Greens.
I mean, who's that fella, Alex Salmond? Does he cry wanking over the fucking sun every day?
I don't think Salmond wants independence.
You don't?
No. I think he's achieved his position of maximum power within a kind of devolved Scotland. And if you look at the Yes campaign, it's fucking pitiful, right? So there's almost nothing, right? And part of the reason for that is, they've kind of maxed out in terms of the power they can achieve in this current setup. They'd like sort of devolution max, and they won't even know that themselves because they're politicians. They've spent their whole lives lying to people, and now they're lying to themselves. They think they want an independent Scotland, and they can't fucking handle it, and hence there's no campaign.
Okay, how comes you're so right on so many things, but then you tell rape jokes? Rape
jokes? I tell jokes about everything. And there's no reason that you shouldn't do jokes about rape as well. Why wouldn't there be? Why do you want a burqa thrown over that side of fucking life? I mean, there's no area you couldn't deal with rape in, right? So you could deal with rape in the most debased art form possible, an ITV 2-part drama, right? No problem. You could do a song about rape and fucking rhyme it with cape, right? Nobody would say anything. Why is it? When the fact that you tell a joke, so it's suddenly a problem? Do you think it trivialises it? I mean, it doesn't have to. It depends on the joke and it depends on the context.
Well, for some people, it can be a trigger. It's one of those things that can...
Well, everything can be a trigger. I mean, in any audience, 1 in 4 people will have been affected by cancer.
Yeah.
Do you not talk about cancer? And also, who draws up this list of what we can and cannot talk about? Another thing is, people go, oh, you can't say that in public. And you're like, well, I've just said it in public to 2,000 people and everybody fucking laughed. What they really mean is, you can't say it because the fucking media will get hold of it and go nuts.
Yeah.
And again, public opinion isn't public opinion then, it's media opinion.
We have a very liberal left in this country who act as the conscience for everybody.
That's the thing, isn't it?
Like from The Guardian and people like that.
But that's people wanting to go, I want to draw a line around myself and all the good people, right? And there are various criteria that I'll use for that. So one is, people who tell jokes about rape are outside this line. That's quite arbitrary, isn't it? People who have certain linguistic preferences, they're outside that line, And you're like, well, that doesn't really work, apart from anything else. That's about as useful as fucking judging people on their music taste. And we do that as well. I mean, we have huge prejudices about that.
They're a bit anxious, put them outside.
I think we design things by language, right? And language is charged in the way that we choose to charge it, right? So words aren't the thing, There's like Alan Watt and Robert Anton Wilson going about this a lot. The map is not the territory, the menu is not the meal, right? So words are things that we can choose the meaning of. We can choose to give rape or even a joke about rape whatever charge we want to, and ideally what we want to do is charge it up in a sophisticated way where it doesn't stigmatise the victim and does stigmatise the perpetrator, right? that's all completely sort of blocked off from us in a simplistic kind of, you mustn't say that, you mustn't joke about cancer, you mustn't.
What about the Twitter abuse?
I just think it's just a sign of like huge misogyny in the society. It's a really fucked up. I mean, rape culture, that phrase, it is a rape culture. It's a fucked up rape culture. How do you deal with it? Do you deal with it by being completely silent? Do you deal with it by not talking about it? Do you deal with it by prohibiting it being spoken about in certain ways? Probably not. But, I mean, the first step is to recognise it's a fucked up sexist society.
Yeah. David Cameron's going to sort it out, though. He's got the internet. He said that he's going to sort out that you can't look at any more sexualized imagery or is it porn?
I think that might actually fucking get the whole country just going again. Do you know what I mean? Just that whole thing of, what, there's no porn, I might as well go into work. You know what I mean?
What about the NSA spying then? We were talking about that a minute ago, and Edward Snowden. On our internet, looking at our information, big corporation, Tyrell, Serco, checking you out. I
don't know, I think Snowden's for real, right? And that's obviously like, you know, it seems to be what's happening and stuff, but why do they allow that information to become public? I mean, is it a thing of so that we all start behaving as if we're being surveyed? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think, like, do you think you're being followed?
No.
Have you been chipped? Do you think you're being chipped?
No.
But do you not think that there's a possibility that one day that, like, you was, like, I don't know, at the BBC and they took you away and you was injected unbeknown to yourself, and that you're just...
Maybe they had a fucking MK Ultra style
they
programme.
They can just, like, switch you on like that and you just go.
Maybe they just had fucking trigger paedophiles at the BBC in the 60s, man.
Yeah.
Maybe that was why... Maybe they all started in Radio Caroline and International Waters. That was just a mad paedophile ship.
Was it?
Got called in. Well, that's maybe why they were in International Waters. It wasn't to do with the fucking radio licences. It was actually just sexually they couldn't be allowed on land.
The Bilderberg. Now, I always say about conspiracy and conspiracy theories, I always say that even if you thought you knew the truth, you wouldn't even be close. And I often use, like, the IRA and, like, the British Army killing people. But the Bilderberg, what's your thoughts on Bilderberg?
I think that's like... you got to accept that big interests fucking do meet up and make agreements, right? But Robert Anton Wilson says an interesting thing when he goes, most big conspiracies last 4 to 5 years. Most good conspiracies, he says. You think, yeah, that's probably right. Things like, let's fix the LIBOR rate and make a bunch of money, that probably lasts for a sort of 4 or 5 year period. 4 or 5 years, it just happens to be, you know, the time a president or prime minister spends in office, do you know what I mean? Where they can force through as much money making stuff as possible. So I think that's how conspiracies work.
But that's how also scandals work, isn't it? With like MPs, you think, oh, just wait till tomorrow, something else will have happened by then.
Yeah, that's a much shorter scale, but there's that thing of, there are big groups of people whose interests mesh who go out and try and make money. I mean, that's what conspiracies are, really. Most conspiracy theories I don't believe in. What most people would call a conspiracy theory, I don't believe in.
Barack Obama?
He's actually been really damaging. I mean, as was said by a few people at the time, because he had more credibility, he was able to be a lot worse than Bush. And if you look at what he's done, Bush's thing was essentially to intern people without trial in Guantanamo and to ignore people's legal and human rights. Obama has transferred that into killing people with drones and just getting rid of the whole fucking rendition process by fucking killing them on the spot.
But even with the NSA thing, he just come out and said, no, we're not doing it, and it was like a blatant lie. It's all right. They do what they want. It's anything.
But he's so much more plausible, and he's so much more media plausible than Bush. You've got to remember, Bush was playing to the public a lot of the time. That whole I have underestimated people. That plays great in America. They like people to act stupid. They know
but Barack Obama, he does the Charlie Chaplin speech every day.
Yeah.
Do you know that I believe that his rhetoric, his narrative is always very sort of like.
But it's rhetorical. It's all this stuff about hope and change and you know.
People buy into that shit though. They're like, that's gone. They're in there. They're with him.
Well, there's an interesting thing. I can't remember where I read this, but someone said, remember the old thing of low information voters?
Yeah.
They used to have in election strategies. So part of the thing was like some fuckers just, you know, living in a hut somewhere in Arkansas, and you call him a low information voter because he won't have read any of the preamble and he won't have watched the presidential debates or whatever. Now they don't use that term anymore because they just consider that nobody has enough information to make an informed decision.
House of Lords, quickly.
Well, you know, if you have an unelected fucking chamber in a democracy, you know,
They are the skull fuckers, mate. They are the ones. Nigel Farage, the EU. I've got a fucking list here. I can just keep going. This going to round this up, right? Akala said humans are stupid.
I wouldn't say humans are stupid. I would say stupidity has been a huge force in history. Stupidity has been a huge force in human development that's got us to where we are. But let's not forget that things like altruism have also been huge forces in human history, and you know, we've got to kind of look on the positive.
So what's the future of mankind?
Could be anything. Could still be anything. I like to think that we're at that point in the movie, you know, where everybody's lost all hope. Do you know what I mean? And we've got these fucking great beasts stalking us. The corporations, which call themselves human beings in legal terms, you know, they have the rights of humans. And that's why they exist as they do now. And we've just got to find out a way of killing the monsters, you know.
I'm the Irish taxi driver. This, my friends, has been Frankie fucking Boyle.